So here's a question for you. Do you buy multiple copies of the same comic book? One to read and one to store in a bag and board? That was a question that was actually submitted to me by a subscriber of the channel. And my short answer is no. I don't do it at all because I personally believe that it ties up too much of my financial resources. But I think we should talk about it because it is a legitimate question. Stay tuned for the video. Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. A subscriber by the name of Cody recently submitted a question to me asking if I buy multiple copies of the same comic, one to read and one to store safely in a bag and board. And his question really revolves around this idea that reading a comic could potentially devalue that comic, right? Because you're touching it, you're opening it, you're bending the cover potentially, and you are potentially devaluing that book because it may or may not come back at a 9.8 or a high grade book. So I think it's a legitimate question, and he wanted to know my thoughts. As you heard in the intro, the short is no, I don't do that. Because I think buying double copies of every single book, at least for me, I feel like that ties up my financial resources. Books are already expensive enough at $4, $7, sometimes a little more, right? Depending upon whether it's an oversized issue, you can tie up a healthy amount of money every single week if your pull list is a sizable one. So I personally don't do that. And by and large, I try to read most books that I pick up, but because I've been reading a lot of the older stuff, my newer stuff is actually sitting in the bin. Now, I should also say that I do buy doubles of some books, like Amazing Spider-Man and Immortal Hulk. I actually have two runs of those books that I'm actually kind of stockpiling, right? Because I get a set from each one of my local comic shops to show them a little love, but also because I really like those titles. So in those cases, I'm buying 2 copies, but not for the purpose of reading one and saving one. That's not necessarily the idea. But again, I definitely get where the question is coming from. So what do you do if you have that fear that reading a comic actually devalues it? I think you actually have some options. One option is to read the book and just read it very carefully. Another option is to buy a book and bag and board it right away, and to maybe buy a subscription to one of the services out there where you can actually read that book digitally. And so you never actually have to open the book up. With Marvel Unlimited, I think there's actually a 6-month delay between new books and when the books actually get posted to Marvel Unlimited. So you have a little bit of a delay there. I am not that familiar with Comixology, so I think you would have to look into that to find out what the lag time is there, because I honestly don't know. There is also the digital option where I think you can actually peel off a code sticker that's actually on the comic so that you can actually read it digitally. I don't know if you want to go that route, if that is still a thing, because I think that it makes the book incomplete if you're pulling that thing off and that is now missing. It almost makes it like the Marvel value stamps back in the day where kids and people actually cut those things out, and they did it very carefully, but it still results in an incomplete book. So I don't necessarily know if you want to go that route. And again, buying 2 copies of every single book seems a little risky to me because you're spending 2 times the amount of money on a book that may not actually be worth much of anything, right? And so again, what I tend to do is I actually just buy the book and I try to read the book as carefully as possible, or depending upon my reading habits at the time, I'll just read it on Marvel Unlimited because I already have a subscription there. But I'm curious what your thoughts are. What do you guys think about this? Do you buy doubles of every book? Do you buy doubles of certain books that you believe to be valuable so that you can read one? Do you read them digitally? Do you pull the coupon code off and actually just read it online? How do you guys manage this? And is it a real concern for you? Are you really concerned about physically reading the one copy that you have for fear that you could actually devalue that book? Because keep in mind, you can always, if you bend it a little, you can, and you don't break color, you can always send it in to be cleaned and pressed and hopefully remove that imperfection. So I'm curious what your thoughts are. Be certain to leave your comments in the comment section so that we can all learn from one another. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. I hope that you may have found it informative. And if you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so at Reggie Collects on Instagram and reggiecollects@gmail.com. Take care. Oh, and if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, make sure that you do so that you can stay abreast of all the content that I release on a weekly basis.